You're listening to Heritage Radio Network. HRN is food radio supported by you. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org.
This episode is brought to you by Roberta's, home of Heritage Radio Network for 10 years. Roberta's was founded in Bushwick in 2008 and has become one of the most iconic restaurants in the country. HRN made its home inside of Roberta's in 2009, and together they have become part of the DIY fabric of the neighborhood. Roberta's, the pizza restaurant, is open for lunch and dinner 7 days a week and serves much more than just the famous wood-fired pizzas. Their team dreams up new salads, pastas, and sandwiches on the regular. Roberta's Tiki Bar is alive and well in the back garden, serving up frozen drinks in the summer and hot toddies in the winter. Stop by the bakery and takeout spot next door for fresh breads, sticky buns, and pizzas to go. And of course, there's the 2 Michelin-starred Blanca tucked away in the garden for truly daring diners. But Roberta's also extends beyond Bushwick, with multiple locations in New York City and now in Los Angeles. You can also find their frozen pies in grocery stores around the country. The spirit of Roberta's, like Heritage Radio Network, is everywhere. Here's to many more years of pizza-powered radio. Learn more about Roberta's at robertaspizza.com.
Hi, I'm Peter Reinhardt, and welcome to Pizza Quest. We are back with a new episode, and today the focus is on quest, not pizza. You know, we talked about this before. This year, in this new season of Pizza Quest, we're going to be broadening the scope of what we talk about and really focus on what it is that makes life meaningful and that drives people. Kind of that we've always talked about it as that burning itch in our gut that makes us do things, and we're not really sure why until we have a chance to look back. And today, we've got a special guest, an old friend of mine. We go back 52 years, back to Boston. 51 years. Thank you. Shmaria Shore, who back when I knew him 51 years ago, he was Stephen, I was Doug. Totally different time in our lives. We had a restaurant together. We worked with a group of people and had a restaurant collective in Boston called Route 1 Cafe. Root spelled R-O-O-T, naturally. It was a manifestation for its time. And from that, hundreds of people came through and we worked together, lived together. It was a unique time. And then we all went our different ways. And a number of years ago, Stephen / Shmaria reconnected with me. And he is now a rabbi living in Israel. And we're going to get a little bit more of that story. That's just the teaser. What I need to do is, first of all, welcome you, Shmaria, and thank you for joining us. Where in Israel are you?
I'm living in the village of Kfar Hasidim, which is close to Haifa.
Near Haifa. Okay, so the northwestern part of the country. And a lot has happened in that amount of time. You and I have had a chance to talk beforehand about and caught up on a lot of that. But for the sake of our readers, can you?
I would like to suggest that we already schedule another meeting in another 50 years.
Yeah, and we'll get together in 50 years and see where we're at. But how did it happen? When we split up and I was Doug and you were Stephen, a lot has changed since then. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and what brought you to this moment, including how you ended up in Israel and becoming a rabbi?
Okay. Well, okay. I don't think it's not so much as, I don't know what it means when you hear someone says to become a rabbi. A rabbi is a person who has a certain vocation. He works as a rabbi. For me, it's more or less as starting to live as a practicing Jew according to our people's tradition. It is true that I did study in a yeshiva, in a school for a certain amount of years and did receive some kind of like, how do you say it, ordination for being a rabbi. And I was working as a rabbi of a student village where we had 1,200 students from all over the country and really all over the world for about 11 years, from Russia, from Ethiopia. And it was very, very exciting being with them and helping them get back to their roots, just as I did myself. The last 20 years before retiring, I was the head of the a conversion agency for the north part of Israel. And for that, I was interviewing people all day long who would come to fasten their Jewish roots, people who were sons or daughters of a Jewish father or grandfather or grandmother, or various tourists who had decided that they want to become Jewish, and that's what we're doing here.
Were these people who had already been born Jewish and were coming back into the fold, or people who were converting into Judaism?
People were converting, only converting.
Wow.
Most of them Russian immigrants.
Interesting.
Now, my grandparents were all from Russia or Ukraine, the Ukraine. But this was like 100 years ago. They went to the United States like millions of others did. And so I, with a few generations split, I ended up coming back here also.
Well, when we first met, you and I were both studying yoga. You were doing. I remember always seeing you in hatha yoga poses and meditating, and I was doing Kundalini yoga. And there were a whole bunch of other people in our little commune that were on different spiritual paths. And so we were two Jewish kids who were seeking, along with other people who come from different backgrounds. And we're all, basically the common denominator was that we were, quote, seekers. And whatever it was we were seeking, I think it was just simply the purpose of life, a meaningful life for ourselves. And then again, our paths converged. I ended up becoming Christian. You ended up returning, in a sense, fully, to your Jewish heritage. So how did that take place? Where did you go after we left and lost touch with each other back in, we'll say, 1972 or 3? Whenever, and then where did you go after that? Because you were basically at Antioch College at the time doing an internship at our restaurant, and so that was one of the stages of your life. I had already dropped out of college, ended up going back later, but we were essentially. And all these people ended up for some reason together and actually forging very deep relationships. But we were only together for a couple of years, and yet the impact in our lives was so strong that we still try to seek each other out and find each other. We're even planning a Zoom reunion for the Route 1, those who are still left and alive. But where did you go after I lost touch with you there?
Okay. Okay, maybe I should just mention that I come from a less than reformed background, which means that we grew up as an American, actually, essentially. We observed in our home Christmas and Hanukkah together. We observed, sometimes we did a Pesach meal, but we also painted eggs in different colors for Easter, without really understanding what it meant. So it was a general American culture. I think that there is so much emphasis today on knowing who you are inside of yourself, getting connected to your inner self. I think that is important, but I think it's also important for a person to know where they come from. Every person comes from a country, from a geographical area or whatever. I will just give a small thing just to show you what I'm thinking about. I grew up in Connecticut. I was born in Rhode Island, grew up in Connecticut until I finished high school in close to New Haven. When for 5 summers, we went to summer camp in New Hampshire. Now, this was a Jewish summer camp. What I want to tell you though about is that in this summer camp, we sang a lot, and there were people playing the banjo, and we learned all of the American folk songs I learned from the summer camp. I knew by heart, and I still remember the state song of New Hampshire and the state song of Vermont. And I know more or less the history of the Green Mountain Boys and about New Hampshire. But about Connecticut, where I grew up, I don't remember one time from 4th grade until the end of 12th grade that anyone talked to us about in the school about Connecticut, what it is, what it means, what the history of it is. Nothing, absolutely nothing. And so that's interesting for me. I mean, everything I know about Pete Seeger, about American folk music, it's all from these 5 summers in the summer camp. And it gives a person a feeling of identity, of having roots somewhere, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
So anyways, I was into all kinds of spiritual seeking, as you were. Every evening when we were living in the restaurant together, we do something else, all kinds of crazy things. One night the first night I was there, we went Sufi dancing.
Yes.
We were spinning around and we did all kinds of health food things. And we were tasting wheatgrass juice, and we're trying out Scientology. And,
yes. And we would start each day. We would start each day by chanting the Om together. We go Om as a group. Okay. That was kind of our launching prayer.
Okay, but the person who was in charge of that was the person who I'm talking to now. And we had a big table on the restaurant, and we would hold hands. Although that was what we were told to do by yourself, and we would hold and shut our eyes, and we would do Om. Aside from a few rebellious people who would stand by the side and start cutting the vegetables until these crazy Om guys finished what they were doing.
Right.
So what essentially happened was that we, at a certain point, we became connected to a certain Christian group that was into all kinds of, I'm not going to say a cult, but they were... well, you know about it much better than I, because you eventually joined it. But we went to a few.
It was kind of a unique Christian organization that synthesized a lot of Eastern spirituality, the Hindu and Buddhist spirituality that most of us were studying, and kind of incorporated it into and put it under a Christian umbrella. And that was a unique, kind of eye opener.
Okay, let's say for various reasons I decided not to join them. And not to shave my head and join them. And after the end of the 6 months at the restaurant, I went to France. Now, I want to tell you just a bit about that. Going to France, after I did not really find complete enlightenment in Hinduism or Buddhism yet, I was going into French culture, into Christian culture, and I really wanted to be part of the roots of the American Christian culture. That was what I was looking for. This is a chance. I'm going to be where it all started. And Christianity grew up really in Europe, even though, it started in Israel, but the religion itself is European. So I enrolled in a school in Grenoble, which is in the French Alps, all excited, and started meeting French people. I made it a point never to speak English with anyone. And if some American students were sitting across from me, I was pretending as though I don't understand them. And I spoke only French. And I had some interesting experiences. I remember once I was working for a month in August. You know what happened that August yourself. That's when you joined the order.
Oh, okay. We're talking about right? 72.
Oh,
okay.
72. And I was working at a farm for a month, and I had a terrible allergy to all the wheat and everything. And so I eventually ended up in the hospital. And I remember lying in bed, and because my heart was going up and everything. And at the night, this person dressed all in black, he walked into the room, and he looked at me, and he gave me a picture. And the picture of a person with thorns over his head, and he was bleeding, and he was looking half dead. And I said to him, could you please tell me, why is there so much suffering? And he said, c'est un grand mystère. This is a great mystery. Okay, it's a great mystery. So to discover the mystery, I started going to churches every once in a while. I would go into the churches in Grenoble. To my great surprise, they were almost empty. People just didn't go. And I had friends in the university, and I wanted to study religion, and I went to the room the place where you decide what you're going to be enlisted in, and they said, I want to learn religion. We don't teach religion here. You want to be a priest? I said, a priest? I want to study religion. And they said, well, if you want to go to humanities. Okay, humanities was learning Descartes and philosophy. That wasn't really my thing, but I had no choice. So I was studying philosophy, and I talked to the other students there, and Christianity, nobody was interested in that. And so I was looking for myself. I bought a Bible of the Old and New Testament in French, and I started reading it from the beginning. My friends were almost all Christian. And just to tell you just some of the things what I did then, in November, I went with 2 English girls, Protestant. We went for a weekend in Venice, and we were standing there on Piazza di San Marco. By the way, they sold pizza there also. And,
of course.
But yeah, to the tourists. I asked myself if the Italians eat pizza, or if it's only for the tourists. But okay.
But thank you for working pizza into this conversation.
So I was thinking, what can I say about pizza? Okay. I'll just tell you that in Jewish law, we have special blessings over food.
Yes.
There's a blessing for bread. Motzi lechem min haaretz, he who takes bread out of the earth, from the earth. And we have a different blessing for cake, who creates all kinds of food. And so the question arises, is pizza considered cake or bread? I mean, it's low, it's thin, it's skinny. On the other hand, it's not bread. And it's a big question according to Jewish law. But they finally end up saying that, that it is bread. It is bread.
It's bread.
Okay. Yeah.
After the rabbinical councils debated it furiously.
Okay. Anyways, I went into this Piazza. I went into the big church there. There's a giant cathedral. I don't know if you've been to Venice.
No.
And my friends, my Protestant friends, these 2 girl students, they were bored. And I saw inside there's this little room off the sides where there weren't tourists taking pictures. And I saw there's a priest there with all these people. And they were doing, what they do. I went in, and I had a thing that I used to do all the time is whenever somebody's doing something, do it together with them. It's like the journey to the East. I go with the flow. So they were doing communion. So I stood in line, and I went up to this priest, and everybody, I said, they stuck their tongue out, and then he stuck this, not pizza, but it's like a little cracker on it.
Wafer, yeah.
Wafer, and drank some wine. Okay, then we went out, and the girl said, "No, you finished?" I said, "Why didn't you come in?" He said, "No, it's boring." And so I started arguing them that religion is a very important thing, and belief, and you have to try everything out and everything. And we ended up going back, and we stopped by an old Italian town, and we stopped by for some coffee, and this local priest came out, and he was talking to us, and he said, "By the way, are you Protestant or Catholic?" And he said, "We were just in Piazza di San Marco. We were just there, and I did communion." I said, you're a Protestant or Catholic?" And I said, "No, I'm Jewish." Jewish? Yeah, what's wrong with that? I wanted to try everything out. I did communion. You did communion? And all of a sudden, in the restaurant, there was complete silence because he was the owner of the restaurant, and his family heard that. He said, "He's Jewish and he did communion. Look, I don't know what to do about it." Well, look, okay, well, I don't think anything's going to happen to you, but that's not something you're supposed to do. Oh, okay, I'm sorry, okay.
Something might happen to the priest who served you the communion.
Okay. All right, I'll tell you just an important thing that eventually happened. In December of that year, I went to these with 2 girls for a weekend in Lausanne in Switzerland. One of the girls had a boyfriend there who was studying to be a priest, a reverend, a Protestant reverend. He was about 26, 7 years old. His name was Olivier. We stayed at his house, and he was kind of sick. Something was wrong with him. I wasn't sure what it was. Anyways, and in the morning, Sunday morning, I woke up. I slept in the living room, and he had tons of books. And I was looking through the books, and I saw books in Latin and books in Greek. And I always loved languages. And suddenly I saw a book with these weird letters, and it seemed to be, I remembered that this must be Hebrew, because there are 4 letters on the dreidel that says a great miracle happened there. So I took off the book, and he came in and he saw me looking at it, and he says, "You're Jewish, aren't you?" Right? I said, "Yeah." I said, "You understand this?" I said, "It's Hebrew. It's the Holy Tongue." "What? You don't speak Hebrew?" I never learned Hebrew. You're Jewish and you don't know Hebrew? Oh, it's interesting. And I suddenly felt inside something strange, something pushing me that I felt guilty in a sense. Anyways, 2 months later, what is today, January 20?
Today, right now, we're speaking on January 25, yeah.
25. On January 26th of that year, I have a diary, so I remember. I was working in a language laboratory with these two girls, and one of the girls who had gone with her to Lausanne, she came into the room when I was teaching in the language lab, and she was dressed in black. I said to her, "What's happened?" She told me to come out. She said, "Olivier is dead. This person who would stay at his house had died." I said, "What happened?" He said, "He had childhood diabetes." And I was kind of shocked. I felt that somebody was speaking to me from somewhere. And so I went out that day later on into the main place of the city, and I found a place where they sell books. And I saw a little notebook there that said, Manuel d'Hébreu, a manual of Hebrew. And I took it home, bought it. And that night, I wrote the alphabet, the alphabeta of Hebrew, and started learning Hebrew. I felt it was a sign that if this person was a Protestant minister and he knows Hebrew, and this is my roots, why shouldn't I know it myself? This was today or tomorrow, 50 years ago.
50 years. Well, this is amazing that he was kind of a bridge for you. And I want to hear the rest of this story. Why don't we take a short break here, and we'll come back and we'll continue, because this is a fascinating story. And when we come back, in addition to hearing the rest of the journey, I want to also talk with you a little bit before we run out of time today about what life is like living in Israel today under the circumstances of the Holy Land. So we'll be back in just a moment with more Pizza Quest today with Shmaria Shore, coming to us from near Haifa in Israel. And join us in a couple minutes. We'll be back. Welcome back to Pizza Quest with Peter Reinhardt, and today with Shmaria Shore, coming to us from the Holy Land, from Israel. And where we left off, it was kind of a cliffhanger for me. You had just had a kind of it sounds like a life-changing experience with a man who was studying to be a minister, who, in a sense, kind of awakened in you the desire to get back to your, learn Hebrew, to learn the language. And so you bought a book and started studying. And then what happened after that?
Okay, after that, I had no plans to come to Israel, but I did start going to also to a Jewish synagogue in Grenoble, meeting the people there. They all invited me to come to them for the Passover meal. I wasn't ready. I felt hesitant.
Yeah.
And once again, I wanted to be completely French. And instead of going to the Passover meal, I went with three regular French people, boy and two girls, for a weekend in Italy. I want to be into the Italian culture, to know what it is, what it's like. We bought cappuccino, we had pizza, and we stayed.
You were becoming the American European expat.
Yeah. So I'll just tell you one short thing. The morning of Pesach, how do you say in the Passover? Yeah. I was with my Christian friends in Italy, and we were staying at the youth hostel. Hello?
Yep, I'm here.
I don't see you.
You're still there.
Okay, here they are.
Can you hear me? I can still hear you. Yeah.
Okay, we were staying at the youth hostel, and we went to breakfast. The room was filled with people, all young kids traveling. And I sat down, as I usually did, in front of people who did not look American. And I saw two guys speaking Italian sitting across from me. And I said to them, "Buongiorno, come stai? Sta bene?" I started trying to talk to them in the minimal Italian that I knew.
Yeah.
And they didn't pay too much attention to me. And I thought to myself, isn't it good that I came with my friends and I'm getting immersed in European culture instead of going to some kind of boring Passover ceremony. Anyways, in the middle, I'm talking to them. These guys took out of their bags, they're talking to each other, and I see that they're eating matzah. Matzah? These guys are Jewish, they're Italian, and they were eating matzah. okay. Once again, I felt kind of weird that something's happened to me. I felt I was getting slapped in the face. So finally, and
It sounds like
end,
you were getting message from the universe in a sense.
Something like that. I came here in the summer of that year and spent the summer in Israel. This was right before the Yom Kippur War. I found the country that was very, everyone was very informal. Everything seemed very original, ancient. Jerusalem was just wonderful. I felt I was going back to some kind of roots and kind of fell into an American place where people study Torah in the original language.
Wait, are you saying that from this experience was it Venice? Was it wherever it was where you met these Jewish guys that convinced you to just head on over to Israel?
No, it's just an interesting story that kind of goes into that. My friends in where I was staying, they kept saying you should visit Israel. I was planning on going to India, to Bulgaria for all kinds of reasons. But I said, well, I'll stop off in Israel and spend a few weeks there and see what happens. Even when people ask me today if I've been to India, I say to them, of course. And they said, how was India? And they said, no, I traveled to India, but I stopped here. But in the meantime, I'm still here. I haven't continued. So it's been 50 years in the meantime.
a little layover, the 50-year layover in Israel.
Journey to the east.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I'll tell you the truth. I know that most of your people who are watching this are not Jewish. They probably are Christian, some of them believing or some not. In general, just summarizing this year in Europe, I was surprised. I'm not going to say disappointed. I was surprised at the lack of interest of the European nations in their Christian roots.
Yeah.
And I never could understand why people would be praying to some man, to someone, like, even though they might say that, I would say to myself, I was trying to understand it. They say there's a Trinity, this God and the Son, but they pray to the Son. James Taylor says, look upon me, Jesus. They close their eyes, they see him. I didn't get into that. I remember going to one of the museums, and there was a glass case, and inside the glass case, there was some kind of object like that. I looked at it, and it said, Jesus's finger.
It was a relic.
It was a relic.
Yeah.
I said, I said to myself, I hope there are only 9 other relics of that. There were places where I saw nuns going up the stairs on their knees and kissing the stairs because there were drops of blood there that he had shed. And I didn't see, okay, maybe you think this person was holy or not holy. We say, according to Jewish tradition, Christianity has done a good thing, and that people all over the world, pagan people, let's say, in the Far East, in Africa, and all kinds of places, who were bowing down to the sun and to all kinds of bats and animals and everything, they now know that God created the world. They know that he had a chosen people. They know that there was prophecy. This has brought the nations of the world closer to belief in one God. Mm-hmm. That is a good thing that Christianity has done. But my conclusion from the end of that year in Europe was that this is a nice thing. It's done some good things, but why not go to the origins themselves? Yeah. And so that's what I did. I decided to stay here.
Yeah, it's interesting how where a person is at a certain time in life, how some things make sense and they work for you and other things don't, and whether they ever click in, later or not. But these things happen for a reason, and the doors had opened for you to go back to your roots, to your religious roots, and pursue it that way, as opposed to because the what you had seen both in Europe and in your own life of what Christianity represented wasn't clicking for you, and yet people that go the other way and go into Christianity, things like that start to make sense. The relics and the icons and the prostration, all that makes sense, but only if you're in it. It doesn't make sense from the outside looking in. It only makes sense if you're deeply in it. And you found for yourself a path back to where you wanted to be and needed to be.
I would just say that to live in Israel, for me, it's not just a matter of religion. In the United States, a person who is Jewish or he's a rabbi or whatever, it's a religion. There's Christianity, there's Islam. For me to be here in Israel is being part of a people and being part of the miracle of us having come here after 2,000 years. It's just unbelievable. We just see something is happening here. And I know it's very challenging also for Christian theology to deal with that and to understand it and see what it means for them, whatever meeting it does happen. For me, though, it was just incredible to being in the school and be standing in front of 500 Ethiopians who had just come back, who are apparently from the tribe of Dan, one of the 12 lost tribes. And we had also about 500 Russians in the early 90s. And everyone would look at the other and say, they're Jewish, they're Jewish, they're Jewish. And to realize that we're all part of the 12 tribes and we've come to rebuild our tradition here. It's just incredible. I've been privileged to be here. My children most of them live in Samaria, in the biblical Samaria, in the biblical town of Shiloh in Hebrew, which is where the tabernacle was for a few hundred years before Jerusalem. We've all of my children, myself, we've all served in the Israeli army, which is in the States. I never see a soldier. Who would go into the army? People go into the army? We never heard of that in Connecticut. But right. But here it's part of our life, and it's a great privilege.
So did you also enlist in the army then, in the Israeli army?
I enlisted, but when I was enlisted, when I was prescribed to come into the army, I was already 30 years old, and I had 3 children, so I did not do full service. But I was in the army. I learned, went through very short basic training, but it's part of being, it's part of our Jewish identity, of the Jewish people having come back here.
Had you already begun your rabbinical training and work? So were they able to use you as like a chaplain or, a spiritual counselor for the soldiers and stuff?
No. There are thousands of religious people in the army. It's not, you don't have to be a chaplain for that. We don't really need chaplains. That's what I'm saying. It's that's part of our life.
But then in Israel, and again, we're skipping ahead a little bit because now we're closer to the current time, but in Israel, there's also that divide between those people who take the Jewish religion seriously and those who are, in a sense, just like in America, they're sort of more every day they identify with the faith, but not with the religious path itself.
Right. This is something which is to be understood because we've come here after 2,000 years. And it's interesting that the group of people who began the Zionist movement were not religious. There were some religious people who were into that, but Herzl himself was not religious at all.
Right.
And this is important because if you look in the Bible yourself also, you can see there was a division between Joseph and his brothers. Joseph, when he was in Egypt, he looked like an Egyptian. He talked with an Egyptian accent. He dressed like an Egyptian. He was part of, like, say, a general secular culture.
He was like the Pharaoh's right-hand man, wasn't he?
That's right.
Yeah.
By the way, also Moses was. Moses was brought up in Pharaoh's home.
That's right. Yeah.
And the salvation of the Jewish people came from them, which means that all of the various kinds of people, the secular and the more religious Jewish people, all have a role to play here. I'm not saying that to live a secular life is an ideal, but also I think that many parts of the religious people in Israel are kind of missing it out if they're not combining things together. We have some ultra-Orthodox people who just want to be closed in and do their stuff. We have people who are completely secular, who don't want to be part of the Orthodox world. And we have myself and my wife and my children, we brought them up in a more, I would say, a kind of a group which is combining both paths. On one side, identifying with the Jewish people, with the renewal of the Jewish people, and with the Zionist lookout, and thanking God for having returned to our old borders in the meantime, and at the same time continuing to observe Jewish traditions and laws. It's the same thing. It's going together.
So you're looking for more for a balance of both.
Right, a balance of both, definitely.
Kind of a middle way, so to speak.
No, I can understand.
There's going to be extremes on either side.
I can understand that our Jewish brethren in the States do not come. I have a sister in the United States. I have cousins. But I do not understand why the so-called religious Orthodox Jewish people in the United States do not come here. That is something which is beyond my comprehension. I have no claims against my other people who did not get a stronger Jewish education than myself. Why they do not come here and live here? Because they grew up as Americans, like we both did.
Well,
you grew up in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, and
so, I was in Philadelphia once.
Yeah,
I have a quiz for you. I don't know if I asked you.
Yeah, let's take the quiz.
what was I doing in Philadelphia? September 1970. I traveled 700 miles from Ohio to Philadelphia to participate in the National Black Panther Convention. Free Huey Newton.
Yeah.
Then. Okay. I mean, our people have always identified with movements of freedom all over the world. And as in many of the Christian songs about freedom have motives from the Hebrew tradition.
Right. Certainly. So gospel music reaches right back into the Old Testament days. Yes.
Yeah.
So what's the quiz? What's the quiz question?
No, the question I answered. I gave you the answer.
I didn't know that. I didn't have the answer. The answer was the Black Panther. Brother, the Siddur brotherly love. Yeah,
it was. The convention took place in Philadelphia. Maybe you were there. I don't remember.
I was not. I was in Boston at the time, just getting ready to start the Route 1 Cafe.
Okay.
And you were in Antioch, in Ohio, along with my friend Michael Goldfarb, who was at Antioch. He was there a year ahead of you, and who then later on went on to do NPR and some other things. And he's going to be coming on Pizza Quest in a future episode as well. So, but Antioch was a hotbed of sort of radical thinking. It was a radical university, and a lot of things spun out of there.
It was incredible. It was incredible. It was incredible. Wonderful experience. And, yeah.
No, well, I didn't want to cut you off, but I wanted to follow up on what we were just saying about sort of life now in Israel and the challenges there, both for people coming, with all different backgrounds. You mentioned at the beginning of our conversation that your work for many years was to help people who wanted to become Jewish convert over. So number one, why do you think people want to become Jewish if they weren't raised in that way, if that's not their original heritage? Although you could say for many people it was their original heritage, but why were they drawn to Judaism per se, and especially in a country that is what the rest of the world would perceive as the danger zone, and with all the challenges that is going on there, and then how do you do it? Then how did you? In the Christian, I don't know if the term catechize would apply here, but if you're going to become Christian, then you go through a catechize training. So how do you do it for somebody who's coming from Russia or some other country who says,
I'll tell you,
Jewish?
Okay, look, this program that we have here, this program going on for the last 25 years, it's more than 90% for people who are already living here, but their mother's mother is not Jewish. According to Jewish lineage, goes from the mother. A person who has a Jewish, a Christian or Russian father any Jewish mother, then the child is Jewish. And if it's the opposite, then he is not considered Jewish. Now, according to Jewish law, anyone who has one Jewish grandparent has the right to come here and get citizenship. Oh. This means that many people who grew up Jewish, they suddenly discover, well, actually, since my mother's mother was not, then I am not also. And then they want to get married, and they come to the rabbinate, and they said, sorry, but we cannot marry you yet. So this was set up to help these people.
I see. Okay.
Now, we also had some people who were just either they fell in love with somebody, or they just, we have people from all over the United States who suddenly decided that that's what interests them. They became, since the state of Israel was formed, many people have become interested in the state of Israel and to trying to see what's going on. And they come here. Now, they do not get immediate citizenship. And that's the reason if they do not have that, they cannot enter this program unless they get special permission. And that was my challenge, interviewing them and seeing what's going behind it. Most of them were sincere. Some of them came for all kinds of reasons, better or worse. And most of them we could help, and that's what we do. Now they study in a program of studying once or twice a week in evenings, and we have them get connected to some kind of synagogue, and they start learning Jewish practices such as observing Shabbat, and they meet a rabbinical court of 3 rabbinical judges who are not judging them, but they're more or less getting to know them. And when a person is ready for that, and they have studied, they have basic knowledge of our own biblical history, and they have a basic lifestyle according to Jewish tradition, then they go to a ritual bath. And at that moment, when they go into the ritual bath, they receive a Hebrew name, which they choose. And that's their new rebirth.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All the parallels are there between Judaism and Christian. I mean, when people ask me, are you Jewish or are you Christian? I say I'm a Judeo-Christian, because you see that one obviously leads into the other. But when we started again, going back 52 years, we all had this sort of burning desire inside of us to try to scratch that itch. What is my purpose? Why am I here? Who am I? And what do I need to do to find a fulfilling life? You went through a series that you described of steps that incrementally brought you closer and closer till suddenly you landed in the Holy Land. And it sounds like you've, in a sense, found your calling. You found yourself there and found a life, a purpose. How would you describe what that, finding? You were no longer a seeker, you were now a finder. What was that like for you?
But we're seeking all the time. I would like to, I don't know if this is what your direction is at the moment. I'd just like to say one last thing. People here are so different. Everyone is different, of course.
Yeah.
Not everyone, or not all religious people are the same and everything. But I think that one main thing that looking back 50 years, that does not so much exist in the States. In the United States, there is a great emphasis on everyone being, of course, everyone is equal, everyone has equal rights. And but I think that there's one thing is missing. And when I'm here and I see the Jewish people, I see Arabs, I see Jewish people from different cultures, it's important for a person to realize that different peoples are different. They have a different way of thinking. They have different mentalities. You cannot, even in the States where you have problems between there's whites and blacks, there's Hispanic, there's all kinds of different things. People come with different ways of looking at things. They're different. It's not, if I say that you're different, it doesn't mean that somebody has to sit in the back of the bus.
Yeah.
I'm saying Jewish and Arabs, the Arab religion is very much, there are some things which are the same. We all believe in one God. But the Arabs also believe that everyone must believe in Muhammad. And if not, then they have to die. I mean, you can find some nice Arabs who you can dance with on the streets in the United States and go to all kinds of, whatever you call it, and put flowers in your hair. But
we could do Sufi dancing together.
And the difference is, it's unfortunate, but in some of the villages close to where my children live, when a person is stabbed to death, then by an Arab, then in the Arab village, then they hand out candy and they dance in the streets. Now, they have a different mentality. But I'm not talking, that's bad stuff. But also in the good stuff, people have different mentality. Before you can be together, and in the late 60s, when we were in the Route 1, we were always talking about that, of everyone being together and everybody's the same. It's fun to be the same. It's fun to be together when you realize the differences between people. It's a richer way of looking at life. Like in the Jewish people, we're not all the same. We have 12 tribes. It's like a rose with petals. We have different petals from the rose. And that's important, not to erase the differences in order to appreciate what makes us together.
Well, before we run out of time, then I'll leave you with one final question. In light of all of this, and maybe hopefully we can have you come back another time in the future and explore this more deeply, is there hope, having lived there now, and you've brought your American sort of perspective and worldview into that culture, so you have a frame for that. You notice the different frameworks of how other people view the world and how hard it is to see things from a common perspective, and yet an intuition that at our roots we all merge from one source. Do you think there's any hope? Do you see signs of hope for reconciliation between the Israeli people and the surrounding, and also not just surrounding, but within Israel itself, the Arab community and the non-Israeli community?
Okay, look, that's an interesting question, of course, that we've been dealing with for the last 40, 50 years. You really have to understand that, look, I'm telling you what I think. It's not a matter of signing a paper and saying there's going to be peace. It's not a matter of that. The Arabs, generally speaking, everybody says some of my best friends are Arabs, and I have Arabs that I know, I have Arabs that I worked with and everything. And but they do not want us here, because we are the only place, where it's a very small place in the Middle East, which is not dominated by an Arab government, and they can't stand that. They cannot stand that. And the hatred is so vicious. It's incredible. I do not see any solution of what you call peace, except for this. They're finally really realizing that we have come here to stay. The Arabs have full rights if they will accept the fact that the Jewish people have come back and they're living here. Now, when we have people of their members in the Knesset who come and meet convicted murderers who are released from jail, and they embrace them and hug them, then that's not where it is. We're not going to get peace out of that. And we have to understand that. And we have been disappointed several times that when the Jewish people left the area after the Gaza Strip in 2005, the Sharon, the prime minister, said, well, now if there's one bomb fired towards us from Gaza, then it's going to be the end. And we left, and they uprooted 8,000 Jewish settlers, and there have been thousands of missiles which have been throwing towards Tel Aviv and Jewish settlements from Gaza at civilian targets. And we don't fire back at their civilian targets because it's not nice, because the Americans will say that no. But that's the way it is here, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, we have to be strong. We have to be strong.
And
we have to.
You can.
They're not just going to wait. It's not just like all you need is love. They don't know. I know that song very well. They don't know it.
Yeah.
I can sing it with you, but they don't know it. Unfortunately, they don't believe in it.
So it's an uneasy situation. We know that historically it's gone back thousands of years, not just 40 years and 50 years. And from what I'm hearing you say is is it's not going to just go away. It's not going to be like we're going to kiss and make up.
I'll just tell you one thing. The Arabs that lived here before we came were part of the Ottoman Empire until the British took charge here in 1917. There was never a country called Palestine. Never. They were part of the Ottoman Empire. Jerusalem was not the capital. It was not the capital. Mm-hmm. Even the word Palestine means the invaders. And that was bestowed upon this area by a Roman emperor when, after the destruction of the temple and the revolt afterwards. The Arabs live on the maps. It says Palestine because that's what they call this area. Mm-hmm. Just like there's the Sahara, but there's not a country called Sahara.
Right.
So on maps they called it Palestine. So now the Arabs are the Palestinian, but there's no such thing. They're Arabs. They're people. They get full rights here. They go and they're treated in hospitals, and we all get set together in buses, and they wait in line. We wait in line, and for that there's full equality. But there is no Palestinian people. That is a fiction that was created by them and by the European world to out of kind of they're not so happy about us having come back here.
Yeah. So it's a way to frame the situation of them and us. And well, I know that this is a very deep subject that we could spend hours on and never solve, but just try to understand. But I really appreciate it. We got the ball rolling today, and I really appreciate you.
I want to tell you that today I went out. I was in a little town here, and I went by two pizza places with my wife. And I said, maybe she would buy some pizza because people are more interested in pizza than Quest. What's that about?
That's why we use pizza, because the people are more interested in that. Okay. So did you get some? Did you get some pizza?
No. Okay. So,
well, wait. You grew up outside of New Haven. So one of the most famous pizzerias in America is in New Haven. Two of the most famous are in New Haven, Frank Pepe's and Sally's. Did you ever go to New Haven for pizza when you were a kid?
I went to New Haven every Saturday, if you could excuse the expression. We also ended up going to New Haven to protest against the Vietnam War. But I don't remember if we ate pizza then.
You missed out then back then. That was the place to go for pizza. And it's still now, after all these years, still one of the top pizzerias in the world.
Okay, next time.
Yeah.
I want to tell you that I'm very impressed by what I'm seeing that you're doing here. The idea of putting the word Quest after pizza, I would never have believed it. It's very interesting. And you have a very interesting list of people you've been interviewing, and I wish you the best of success and good health.
Thank you. And I look forward to the time when I can come back to Israel and see you in person, or when you come back over here and we get together in person. And for those who are listening, if any of you who are watching or listening were involved in any way with the Route 1 Cafe back in the early 70s, we're putting together a Zoom reunion. Contact me at peter@pizzaquest.com, and we'll send you the details, and hopefully we reach to some who we have lost contact with can find us this way as well. Shmaria, thank you so much for being part of this today, being here. We'll look forward to having you back, and we'll continue maybe just, take off from where we left off. And again, shalom, and thank you.
Shalom.
Pizza Quest is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.